Okay, great. Hi, everyone. I'm Sahana from the Societal Platform team. By now, with the number of webinars that we've attended or hosted, I'm running out of opening remarks, which don't have the words uncertain or lockdown or difficult times or taking care of yourself. So today, my opening remarks will be more of an advice, by nature unsolicited, that I'm stealing from our recent monthly open house at Step, where we were kind of reminded about why we should and why it's important to kind of go back to the basics of hoping to find some time to have at least one meal with our loved ones once a day, even if it means via WhatsApp or Zoom, and taking the time to just pause, breathe, and stare at the void rather than just rushing it to fill it up with more work. On that note, on behalf of Gautam and the Societal Platform team, welcome and thank you for joining this micro-learning session. We've done a few of this in the past where we've taken a specific topic that is that's an important construct of societal platform thinking and go deep into it. Some of the topics that we've covered in the past include creating learning experiences for adult learners, power of networks, collaborating with governments, and you'll find the resources, all of these in the resources section of our website. Today's topic is scale modeling. We've heard the need to create impact at scale in several conversations. We talk about it a lot. While we all appreciate the need to work at scale, the how-to of it can often be very daunting. To help us make sense of scale, today we are grateful to have Mihir Mathur and Kabir Sharma of DESTA. Mihir and Kabir practice, teach, and consult systems thinking and are passionate about nurturing an ecosystem of systems thinkers. In our 90-minute session today, they will introduce us to the basics of system thinking and system dynamics modeling. And from there, we will use a case study that will illustrate modeling for scale and what it means for our missions or for our work. The case study that we're using today is on education, but we would urge you to look at the possibilities a model like this offer, irrespective of the domain that you're working in. In this case study, we've tried to account for various parameters, various variables that might speak to most of us, and that are domain neutral, although the case study is education. But for those of you who are keen to take this conversation forward to kind of understand what this means to your organization, we'll talk about how we can do that towards the closing part of the session. Now for some housekeeping, by now we all know the drill: raise hands, use the Q&A feature, mute and unmute whenever it's needed, chat option to interact. In our webinars, we enable the talk feature to all attendees. Sorry, 1 minute. Sorry, that's my child in the background. We enable the talk feature, just one. Yeah, this is what happens when you work from home. So we've enabled the talk feature for all our attendees, so you could voice your questions. We have 2 brief slots for Q&A in between, and then a larger block for discussion towards the end of the 90 minutes. So it's time now to start our session on scale modeling. So over to you, Kabir and Mihir.
Sana, sorry, this is Gautam. Yes. You forgot the usual this thing about the sound of children and pressure cookers are okay.
Today you heard it, like you saw it live. So you can all allow your kids to come in the background, or dogs, or pressure cookers, everything.
Good. That's really helpful. I think the last part really eased me up. Good. So good afternoon, everyone, wherever you are. And it is really, really great to connect with all of you through this webinar. Thanks to Gautam, Sahana, Naveen, and others who have helped us put this together. We hope we'll have fun during today's webinar and hoping for some meaningful exchanges. All right, we'll get going with this. My screen should be visible to all now.
Yes.
So yes, hope you all are happy and safe. And I put happy before safe because I think it's really important to be first happy. And if you're happy, then I think safety also comes with it. Plan for today is we'll do a short introduction to systems thinking and modeling. And there are some resources which have been shared with you where you can take a look at some of our webinars that talk about this at depth. We'll do a case presentation on modeling scale scenarios for our mission. And we'll have Q&As in between and at the end of the presentation. The focus we want for today's webinar is on understanding scale as a systemic process. And we'll show this by using the method of systems thinking and system dynamics modeling. Every now and then we'll talk about a bit on the modeling process, and if there are some questions, we can respond to those specifically also. Please remember, this case is for illustration purposes only. So more focus should not be on what the case parameters are or the possibilities are, but on the process of looking at the systemic interconnections as they exist in any version of reality that we're dealing with, be it education, climate, etc. So let's begin. We'll do a quick round of introduction to on systems thinking and modeling. A very conventional approach at looking at real world systems is that you compartmentalize them into different domains. And some three large buckets or domains that we have seen in our work are related to environment, economic, and social systems. So we slice the complexity into these three large buckets and domains, and then we go about studying them individually. So ecologist or environmentalist would look at environmental systems and do his or her research on that and come up with a set of things that should be done to improve the quality or the state of the environment. An economist would look at economic system in isolation and would do some study and research on how you can improve quality of life, etc., through economic policies. Social scientists would look at social systems and come up with some set of assumptions and recommendations on what could be done. And then you add them up, integrate them into a larger laundry list, and then you have a 20-point action list, which if you do, it might perhaps dissolve the problems that we're dealing with or improve the state of the entire system. However, a systems thinking approach goes a little beyond than adding the parts. It says that the whole is more than the sum of the parts. And the reason it says is because there are interplays that happen, there are interconnections that happen between these three systems. They don't exist in isolation. Hence, in systems thinking, we say that we need to study those interplays and interactions if we have to understand or get the beat of the system. How environmental systems impact economic systems, climate change, air pollution, other issues with respect to water, land, fertility, all that are impacting our economic systems. The way economic activities are done are impacting our environmental systems. So the real world is made up of feedback relationships and feedback loops. It's important that we look at these elements to understand the dynamic complexity of the system that we're dealing with. We say that all experiences that we see in the real world are an outcome of these interactions and interplays in the real world. So systems thinking looks at these interconnections and then tries to get a sense of what is emerging. A systems thinking definition that we have adapted from various places says that systems thinking is the process of understanding relationships between variables within a system and between different systems, and how their interaction leads to emergence of systems behavior. What is important to remember is that it is a process and not an end in itself. So in systems thinking and modeling specifically, we say that you're never done. All models are work in progress because it's a process of continuously improving your own understanding. The emphasis is on understanding and not really judging or predicting what the system can produce or what could happen in future. What we are interested to understand are interactions which are responsible for the emergence that we see in the behavior of complex systems, be it a social system, a group of people, be it mechanical systems, ecological systems, or the interface between the three, and how to change over time. A shorter definition to remember is it's a process of understanding interactions which lead to emergence of change. And we are always interested to not to predict the future, not to judge individual parts of the system, not to blame individual parts of the system for the poor performance of the entire system, because we believe that all performances of systems depend on the interactions. If it's an organization, the performance of the organization really depends on the social interactions that happen in an organization with respect to culture, how the social systems interact with the technological systems, the ERPs, and the other sophisticated tools that they use, and the overall environment of the office in which you come and go, and the rules and the policies and the benefits, all that cumulatively create impacts of change over time. Now, coming to the dynamics of change, there are basically two fundamental modes of behavior, which is to do with exponential behavior, which is typically a characteristic of reinforcing loop, where both variables or both elements in a system are reinforcing each other's behavior, which could lead to a compounding growth or a compounding decline, which is in this case an exponential behavior. The other mode of behavior is a goal-seeking behavior, which is basically a balancing loop, where the system is trying to seek a goal and is heading towards it. As the system moves towards that goal, the growth starts tapering off, and you see a plateau as the system achieves its goal. This could move in both ways. It can go up or down, growth or degrowth, both is fine. This is a classical case of how an air conditioner would work. It will grow, reach the thermostat setting, and then trip there and then oscillate. On the contrary, if you put your money in a bank account, which is giving you interest, which is compounding, your money will grow in a compounding fashion, often leading to exponential growth, which is also seen in population dynamics of how population grows of different species, especially in today's world, the human species. Now, it is the interaction of balancing loops and reinforcing loops which produces all kind of behavior, some which I'm showing you here. On the top right, you see a behavior which is kind of a flux, or you can call it oscillations, where reinforcing and balancing loops are continuously interacting with each other. The system is growing because there are a set of reinforcing drivers in the system. It is also hitting its goals or limits to growth, as we call it in systems thinking. And once those limits are hit, the system degrows itself, but again, the drivers kick in and regrows itself. So it's a continuous process of shifting dominance of factors which are responsible for growing or degrowing the system, including the limits which are often hit. These limits are dynamic. We sometimes overcome them, and new limits come and hit us. Then we enter into another phase and we try to overcome those also. On the left-hand side, you see a classical behavior of growth and correction, or overshoot, as it is popularly called, saying a system grows. Sometimes it overgrows itself, which leads to an overshoot, which could be temporary or quite severe, after which the system goes into a collapse, an overshoot and collapse model. The bottom left behavior you see is a classical behavior of a resource-based exponential growth, where the system is growing and consuming resources, and the resources are exponentially falling, which leads to overshoot and then a severe correction. Something similar to what we had seen in Easter Island as a case in point. On the bottom right, you see exponential behavior of a system which is oscillating, not exponential, sorry, oscillatory behavior of a system which is oscillating but also growing over time. And there are various kind of patterns which emerge from interaction of feedback loops. And there are just not two feedback loops in real world. There are many which exist. System dynamics modeling looks at quantifying the interplays or interrelationships between variables. It focuses on simulating those interplays, saying if these interactions exist, what could be the outcomes that emerge from these interactions? System dynamics uses the language of stocks and flows, internal feedback loops, and time delays. And then you can quantify some of the relationships that you have qualified using systems thinking. System dynamics originally came at MIT in the mid-1950s. The originator of the field is late Professor J. Forrester, who in the 1950s pioneered this art of modeling complex systems using stocks and flows, feedback loops, and time delays. The three initial works that came from this field was industrial dynamics, urban dynamics, and limits to growth, which by far remain the pioneering work in this field, and especially limits to growth, which also created quite a news back in the 1970s. And even till today, it is very much there. It holds relevance for what we see happening around the world. This is the website of the System Dynamics Society, and you can go on there and find a lot of resources, papers, commentaries, articles, so available for free. There's also a conference that happens every year. This year, the conference is virtual, and that is going to happen in July next year. We are really looking forward to that conference, where more than 500 people have registered for a virtual conference. There are thoughts of doing it in 3-dimensional mode. It's going to be fun. The question comes then, why model? Because sometimes we also say that models are simplifications of reality. They're not really real. So they have some restrictions, and they can't really predict the reality for you. So why model? In systems, we say modeling is a formal way of understanding our mental models. And our mental models are basically assumptions about what are the interconnections in the real world. we always have them in our mind when we speak about an issue, when we design projects, when we talk about impact. It's just that we don't formally, explicitly show those interconnections that we are talking through. Model building or modeling is a formal way of explicitly making those interconnections and speaking through them. They really help us test our own assumptions about reality and undergo a learning process. We also verify them through model-based conversations. We always have conversations on development issues. We have debates on certain issues, social issues. But can we improve our collective understanding about the real world? And one of the ways of doing that is to having conversations using models which show cause and effect as a system. And through this process of conversations, we also then end up improving our collective understanding of relationships. And by that process, also understand each other's mental models a little better. Hence, one must always remember that as much as we think models are driven by computers and algorithms, the way to use model or the modeling process is very, very social in nature. Any change that anyone wishes to create in the world is essentially rooted in social interactions. Models are no exception for that. System thinking model essentially have to be used in a very socially interactive spirit. Then comes the question, why simulate? If all models are partially correct, then why to simulate? We could get wrong results. Well, the job of simulation is to test our assumptions about outcomes of interactions. What we think mentally, what could be the future if these interactions hold true, and what models tell us. It is to come to terms with multiple future possibilities about what kind of possibilities exist under what conditions. Model simulations help us evaluate our own decision options. But whoa, I had thought that if I did A as an action, this is the kind of trajectory that I could get. But maybe model is showing something else, so maybe I'd missed a couple of things here and there. Models also need to be evaluated, challenged, tested as we improve our learning. Hence, through this dual relationship between humans and models and back to humans, this engagement process ultimately helps us improve our decision making. It helps us come to terms with what assumptions goes into the decision making processes. Do we need to be more social in our decision making processes? And why it is important to consider multiple angles when you look at a complex system. If there are any questions here, clarificatory questions or any thoughts or reflections, we can take those before we move ahead.
If anyone has any questions, you can unmute and speak. If you're not able to unmute, we can help you. Suki has a question about, can Mihir give real life examples of each concept he introduces? Do you want to go into that, Mihir, or we have a case study to illustrate?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll definitely reflect on all these things that I said through the case study.
Okay. I think there are no questions, or you could raise your hand and I can unmute for you. Okay. Looks like we have no questions.
Okay, good. So let's get on with the case in hand, because this is where the theory meets practice, and then we can reflect on some of the theory and improve that as you go ahead. Yeah, we'll come to scale assumptions in a moment. Let me show you a story. Yes. So what we are going to show you now is a causal loop diagram of what the system is around the early education mission. And then we'll also look at the simulation model and what basic parameters go into it and the scale assumptions. So what I'm showing you is called a dynamic hypothesis, a higher order structure of what the system is, what the mission is, the boundary conditions, and especially what are the endogenous feedback loops that is driving the mission. So we have schools that adopt the program. That is our goal. We want more schools to adopt our program, which is aimed at improving the pre-primary education and getting children ready to go into mainstream school. As schools adopt program, we are having a set of teachers who need training, and then teachers training is conducted, which leads to teachers getting trained. And that's the interface which helps us to get children into the program that we have. So the initial bit starts by us reaching out as mission. We start reaching out as program promotion events with schools. We train teachers as we get conversions. And then we ultimately reach out to children. And there's a max children that each teacher can take, which restricts the number of children that gets our program. After a time delay, because we assume that the mission runs for 3 to 4 years, which is in the pre-primary space. After a time delay, as children move out of our programs, get into the main school, the program starts getting visibility with respect to how the children that have got the program are doing in the main school. That program visibility then gives the parents some confidence about what is going on, but this really depends on the performance of the children who have taken the program. Additionally, we also do parent engagement workshops, parent sensitization workshops that help get parents sensitized towards what the program benefits are and what it does. And that really helps more schools to adopt the program because parents are asking for it. So that's a first feedback loop, reinforcing loop, which is basically leading to the growth or the kickstart of the mission and its scale over time. Those variables in green are the variables that we control as mission and we can change. Those in red are not really in our control, but they impact our program. So the number of children that each teacher can cater to really impacts our program. The performance of the children really impacts our program, but performance is partly controllable, partly not under our control. Also, there is a school-to-school word of mouth, which starts coming in after a time delay as the visibility grows. And that really depends on just not visibility, but also on performance of the children which enter main school. And that gives us another reinforcing loop, R2, which starts getting us more schools, more teachers, more children, more visibility, more parents, more schools, also more school-to-school word of mouth. It helps us grow our system over time. Now here, the schools, as they adopt the program, it increases the number of children. With every school that comes into the program bucket, we have more children to whom the program needs to go because there is a potential children per school, which are there, that gets multiplied by the schools, and we have total children in the school. Now, as the total number of children go up, the program visibility, of course, goes down because you have many children who are yet to get the program, whereas the program rollout has a time delay built into it. And with that, as the visibility takes time to build up, there is a time delay because of which the system cannot grow immediately. And that's the balancing loop that comes in, which limits our ability to grow fast or grow immediately in response to the two reinforcing loops, which are resulting into exponential growth of the system. So these are the three core feedback loops that is driving the scale of the mission that we are talking about in this case. The one reinforcing loop is to do with word of mouth from parents. The other reinforcing loop is to do with school-to-school expansion. And then there is a balancing loop, which means that as you scale up, the visibility challenge starts coming in because you have to also scale up your operations, which takes time delay. And that's when visibility can partially come down for some time, ultimately impacting or reducing the rate of growth. Again, the variables in green are the variables that you can influence. Those in red, you don't have control over, but they greatly influence your program scale. So that is a higher order structure of the system that we are going to model and simulate. There are some assumptions that we have made in this. The assumptions to do with scale is that parents will support the program during and after the program, which helps us get word of mouth. Once a school adopts a program, it does not leave the program in future, which means they continue to take our programs. And we assume that performance of children graduating from our program, moving out from our program, is better than other children. So these are the three fundamental assumptions on which our model will run. I will show you the simulation story also, how we have. So what we have shown you is a qualitative systems model, the feedback loops and things. We also quantified these relationships using some hypothetical plausible parameters. And these are the main chains. So we have used main chains to model this system. So there's a main chain of teachers yet to get training, teachers getting training, and then some teachers leave the school, but they still remain trained out in the market somewhere where we can't know where they are. So that's the first main chain. There's a second main chain of children which move into the system, which are yet to get the program, children who then get into the program, then they graduate, move out into the main school, and they're there. and then they move out of the main school, and that is the total number of children who have been impacted. That's the second main chain. And then there is the third chain, which is to do with parents. New potential parents come in to the system who are yet to be sensitized. And then through workshops and other means, they get sensitization about the program. And that completes the third main chain. Are there any questions here? I'm getting some notifications. Okay, no, sorry. All right. Also, it is just not these three main chains, but there's also a school-to-school exchange that happens. Schools which are yet to get into the program or adopt the program, and schools which have adopted the program. And there are two kind of flows which happen between these two stocks. That is to do with new schools adopting the program and the school word-to-word mouth, which happens. The two variables that we get shown in the causal diagram. Now, as this flow starts happening, schools every year starts adopting the program. We have a flow into all the main chains, saying there are potential teachers at each school, which then flows and gets into the teachers who are yet to get the training. There are potential children per school, which multiplies by the flow of schools adopting a program. That gets into the potential children who are yet to get the program. Similarly for the parents, which depends on what is the parents to children ratio. And that's how the system starts flowing. Now, how do we move the main chains? That is the work that the mission does with respect to teachers, trainings that it conducts every year, and the number of teachers which are trained for each event. That influences the number of teachers which move from the stock of yet to be trained into the stock of teachers who have been trained. And then there is a normal attrition rate of teachers, which we have assumed, that leads to teachers leaving the schools. Similarly, as the stock of teachers trained grows, that's what is the interface between the mission and the children. And then there is a maximum number of children that each teacher can take, which leads to the stock of children who are yet to get the program move into children who are into the program. And that's how the mission starts rolling. And then we have a specific time after which they move out of a program and get into the main school. And that's where the visibility starts coming in, saying, these are the children who had got the program, and look what they're doing, perhaps like something else different from other children who had not got the program. And that's what brings the visibility aspects. We also do parent workshops and a number of parents that attend each workshop, which results into parents getting sensitized about the program and becoming aware about what the benefits of the program are. Now, as the stock of schools which have adopted the program goes up, the stock starts filling up, we get a basic number of visibility that starts coming in, which is a function of how many program children are there in the main school against how many schools have adopted our program. You divide the two, and then you get the extent of graduated program children in school. And that starts giving us visibility against the entire population of children that is there in the school. That visibility, along with the performance, which we have assumed that it will be always better, which is the impact aspect of the program. This is fully qualitative. Impact and visibility together then leads to the parents promoting the program. They see it in action, they see the benefits in terms of impacts, and then parents start promoting the program. As they promote the program, it impacts the rate at which new parents get sensitized, and the stock and the flow starts flowing at a higher rate as an endogenous function. And as more parents get sensitized, the word of mouth feedbacks back into the schools which are adopting the program. And that's how the reinforcing loops again start functioning with respect to the growth of the system. Similarly, the impact and visibility of the program also leads to a school-to-school word of mouth. And that also starts impacting the flow from schools who are yet to adopt the program into schools having program. These are the two reinforcing loops that we had shown you in the qualitative model, which starts impacting the growth of the system. Plus, of course, we also do school events and outreach, and the number of schools which are impacted or which are covered in each event. We have given it a very low 10% or 5% conversion rate that leads to schools adopting the program. Yeah, so there's an event conversion rate, there are potential parents, there's a word of mouth threshold. We don't say that the first parent who comes and asks for it, the school will agree. There has to be a particular threshold that we have put there. and things like that. Yeah. So that's the entire simulation model, which is an extension of the qualitative model that you saw earlier. As I said earlier, there are three main chains of teachers, children, and parents. And there's an exchange happening between schools. And the feedback loops goes from teacher to school, teacher to children, into the visibility and the performance combined, creating an impact on word of mouth going back again, and impacting the rate of conversion of schools, which then gives you more teachers and more children, and that is the ultimate story of scale. Before we come to any questions, what we'll do is we'll just show you a sample run so that you know what the system is, basic shape of change or business as usual scenario, as we call it, is. And these are the parameters that we have set up in the model, which you can change, things that you can influence. Parent workshops, number of parents attending the workshop, teacher trainings, number of teachers trained per training, school events and outreach, schools reached per event, potential children per school, which determines the size of the school that you target, the maximum children one teacher can take, which is again a factor not controlled by you, but controlled by the school. And there is a performance of children, which we have given a scale-based rating. The indicators we have used to reflect on scale is how many schools have our program, total number of children getting the program, parents, and total teachers trained. There's also a qualitative variable which greatly influences the scale outcomes, which is to do with visibility of the program, how many people know about it, know the benefits, and then how many schools, what is the word of mouth spread that leads to schools adopting it. So that's how the model is set up. These parameters can be changed on the fly, and you can see the results on this. So I'll do the first run. Right. Now you see exponential behavior on your screen. You see that we start at time 1, and at the end of the simulation time, we have around 6,000 schools who have the program. We have around 150,000 children who are getting the program, who have got the program. Around 2 lakh parents who have been sensitized about it, and roughly 2,000 plus teachers who have been trained into this, through this mission or program. That's what a business as usual run shows, saying that if we plan the mission using these parameters as activities, this is the result we get, considering that those feedback loops that we have shown hold true in the system. Before we move to scale-based scenarios, we can take a pause here. And if there are any questions, we'll be happy to take it. Clarificatory questions, any thoughts?
Suki had a question saying, what is the model, what is the software you're using for this?
Right. So this software is called Stella, S-T-E-L-L-A, Stella Architect. You can see it, it's mentioned here. It is made by IC Systems. That's the software you use. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mihir, this is Gautam.
Yes. Hi.
So, as what was nice to see was how you guys built the model out, right? That you started from one place and built it out. But that kind of depends on being able to understand all of the actors, the interactions, and the incentives. How do you build that landscape from where you can start to build a model?
Are you referring to the social landscape with respect to multiple stakeholders?
No, yeah, because you're running a model. You're running this model after you created it, right? To create it, you identified the various actors, and then the interactions between the actors, and also the incentives between the actors. One of the questions that comes up so often is, what is the boundary condition? So, and how do you identify who's within the boundary, who's outside? And while there's no perfect answer because everything is connected to everything, where do you draw the lines?
Right. That's an important question. And this is where we wanted to reflect on the modeling process a bit. Now, all these models are essentially capturing interactions between different elements in the system. With that spirit, you may end up modeling the entire world. to improve the quality of education. But that's exactly what it should not do. Now, how do you solve that conundrum? Is that you always define the purpose of the model very, very carefully. While defining the purpose of the model, you also need to contemplate about who are the stakeholders or actors who should be consulted with, and there should be some consensus on what is the purpose for which you're building a model. At a more operational level, we need to always have questions that the models should answer, which will essentially tell us what to leave out and what to consider while building the model. All this, I would say again, has to be done as a social process. Kabir and me or anybody else who are modelers can't sit down and say, this is what we think is important and essentially can be modeled or should be modeled, hence we should model it. It doesn't work like that. You have to work with the people who are responsible for the behavior of the system that we see and who are wanting to create a change and who get impacted by it. So it has to be done in a very social process. There are some tools and methods that we use essentially to do with group model building and community-based system dynamics, the kind of work that we have done with FES while building models for 3 different districts. And boundary conditions of models are very dynamic. We start making a model, and every time we run the simulation and we show it back to people, it is the people who come back and challenge the boundary conditions. And when we say people, these are the people who have stakes in the system that you're trying to influence or model. And then through a dialogue and a discussion, we learn about boundary conditions, what should be included, what should not be included, given the time conditions that we have, given the cognitive abilities for interpretation, because you can't just model everything that you have in your head. And then it's a very iterative process. Every time you simulate, every time you model, you feel that you can expand the boundary a little more because you have come to terms with what is there inside the model. So it's essentially an iterative process of how you determine the boundary conditions. But always you have to fall back on the purpose of the model, the questions the model should answer, and the key stakeholders with whom you interact on a continuous basis.
We have a question from Karthik on how do you model qualitative things like feedback loops and referrals?
Right. So this is where in system dynamics, you can quantify qualitative aspects as graphical functions, as scale-based impact functions. And this is the beauty where you can marry both qualitative and quantitative aspects of a simulation model together. We have also realized now that when you talk about social change, it is inherently a complex adaptive systems feature, which means social systems adapt over time. Our decision logics will change over time. So in the model that we are showing you, maybe people are no more happy with just visibility of the program. And based on visibility, they may not continue to refer your program to more schools or more parents. That can evolve and change over time. Hence, it is also very important not just to put them into a scale, which is fixed for the entire duration of the model, but to continuously appraise yourselves and be alert to the changes that is happening in these qualitative aspects. Interact with people, understand the decision-making processes, verify your model logics with the logics that people use, how they change over time, what are the reasons for the change. And through that process, you endogenize some of those qualitative features in your model as scale-based variables, parameters, which system dynamics and Stella software allows you to capture as graphical functions or ratios. That is possible to do. Kabir, if you wish to add anything here?
No, that's good. I can just emphasize that endogenous perspective which you had just said. So in system dynamics, the guiding principle to model boundaries, as Mihir said, which is done in a social process through group model building, is that the dynamic behavior that we see in the system should be produced internally through the feedback loops that we endogenize into the model. So the interaction of those variables through those feedbacks should produce the dynamics that we see and that we're interested in. And that's the endogenous perspective is a hallmark of systems thinking.
Yeah. And sometimes when we start a project, we also go around and ask people what reference modes, saying what is the history of the system, why the situation is the way it is today, and what has been the historical change over time. And there's another tool in systems which we use called behavior over time graphs. We sit with people, help them consider the possibility of what has happened in the past as a scale-based behavior over time graph, saying at a scale from 1 to 10, if you think that the air quality in Delhi was relatively better in the 1990s, where would you put it? People would say, okay, at 4, it was not so bad, but not so good either. And from there to now, where it has gone, and then say it has become really bad, so we scale it up, saying air pollution is going up, and we say we are at 9, perhaps the worst possible place. And then we say what has happened in between these 2 points. How did the system change over time? Did it oscillate? Did it grow exponentially? Did it grow and flatten out? Was there a turning point in the system? And then people start mapping out the shape of change of the system in the history of the system, as the historical life of the system. And then there are some turning points that emerge, saying, well, in 1996, situation was really bad. We got CNGs into the system, and that reduced the air pollution levels to an extent. But since 2004, we have seen a rise in the air pollution due to the growth of NCR, construction activities, and now situation is again bad. To top it up, we have this crop burning and things like that. So we map it out on a BOTG, and then we understand what the system's life has been, and then get a grip on the qualitative aspects of why these changes have happened. Is it to do with social change, technological change, environmental change? And then we start capturing those effects in the model to whatever extent we can.
Thanks, Mihir. Tarun, would you like to ask the question?
Sure,
yeah.
Mihir.
Go
So
ahead.
is it, my question was, Mihir, is it possible to understand in this particular model, which input variable actually has the most leverage? Like as say people
Sure.
running programs, like, how do you determine that when putting together a model? Yeah.
That's right. We should always start with a hypothesis, right? And when I showed you that feedback loop, it was a hypothesis. It said that these are the feedback loops and this is what will happen and the growth of the system will be, but there's a balancing loop. These are the variables that you can impact. So we always start with assumptions. We do identify a set of variables towards which the model will be very sensitive while building the model. We do that. But those are not the outcomes of the model. Those are the inputs to the model with respect to what we think could influence the model to a great deal. And then we set those parameters up the way we have done right now. And then through a multiple scenario building process, simulation process, we change each parameter and see the results that the model shows. We don't believe those results because models can also be wrong because they are made by us. But we investigate the reasons why certain parameters have a higher sensitivity towards change, towards the system. And then when we investigate the sensitivity, we evaluate the causation. We evaluate the cause and effect relationship. And then we say, is it really plausible? Are we overestimating certain impact functions? Are we over-exaggerating certain relationships? Does in real world, the response change by this degree? Like in this case, we have said that the word of mouth will lead to schools adopting the program. We have considered the threshold of 50%, which means that when 50% of the parents ask for it, the school will adopt it. This is an assumption that has gone into the model. But this then also tells us the right questions to go and ask people, saying, well, we have a set of assumptions that we have put in the model. Let's go out, ask questions and verify them with people. And that's how you verify certain parameters which you think are very important to the system, simulate them to understand their sensitivity and learn.
Mihir, do you want to take questions now or do you want to park? We have 2 more questions on this.
Sure, we can take that.
Okay, so Mala is asking, who are we aiming to enable with this model? Who would typically use this?
This model that we're showing you, this model is set up based on our experience of conducting some workshops, a couple of them with people who have been working on early education. But this model essentially was set up for the webinar that we're doing now. But that's a good question. Who are the people who will use the model? We need to know them before we start building models, because those are the people who will have questions that they're struggling with, for which they need answers. And that's the job of the model, to help them go through the simulation exercise building process. But in this case, it's a model that we have set up to show you as a demonstration of what simulation models and systems thinking can do. But depending on the need of the end users, different types of models can be set up.
Mala, I hope it's answered your question. If not, do you want to kind of...
Yeah. May I just add on to that?
Sure.
So the question I'd like to add on is, so is this there? Are we enabling people to become systems thinkers, or are we identifying the need for systems thinking and then looking for resources who can help us? I'm just trying to understand in this ecosystem how that might work out if we are, creating a dependency for someone to come and do this, or are we enabling typically the ecosystem actors this for themselves?
Sahana, do you wish to answer this question? Because I feel it is two ways. Like, one is what you do when you make these models and who then uses it, and the capability aspects that Mala is referring to.
Mala, can you help me understand your question? Are you trying to say whether, say, for example, Argyam can use this model? If yes, who will help you use it?
Yeah, I'm trying to see, is this for a consultant to go in and do some stakeholder analysis to figure out how we can help the stakeholders, or is it for the stakeholder to take it and do it for themselves? I mean, I guess it could cut both ways, but I'm trying to understand how far are we from that. So at this point, it's, I guess, more about someone coming in and doing this for our kind of NGOs, right?
Right.
Mala,
go ahead.
Mala, this is Gautam. If I might take a stab at answering this, I think two different components I separated out into two different components. The first is, part of the goal of this is for us to be able to, as all of us as missions and mission leaders, to be able to identify the boundary conditions for our systems, the actors within our systems, the interactions between the actors, and which of those interactions are key for us to achieve scale. What we're hoping that this will achieve is that first understanding of the landscape and what parts of the landscape are key for us, are key leverage points for us, in particularly to achieve scale. The second is really how we can go about doing this. I don't expect, I certainly am not going to be able to use Stella, but at least we know the tools that are available. So in two separate parts, one is the knowledge and the understanding, the second is the application. The application, I would certainly seek assistance with, but I think there's great value in being able to identify the first well, and also in the non-obvious pathways to non-linear scale that exist within our own, within the systems in which we work.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, cool. Thanks.
Divya had a question on, could you explain with an example how feedback mechanisms help in understanding the dynamics between stakeholders?
Right. Dynamics between stakeholders. So this is where the rubber hits the road. Now there are two things that we're very careful about all the time. One is, because we know how to model, doesn't mean that we need to model everything, which includes modeling dynamics between stakeholders. It's not just complex, it is complex adaptive systems there, which are dancing all the time. We can't predict what they will do. Their decision logics are not consistent. Sometimes they'll cooperate, sometimes they'll hate each other. And that happens with us when we run programs on field all the time. Some elements of the program do very well, some elements don't do very well. Some elements that we think are very important, ecological security, bore well issues and things, we don't get any support there. On some aspects, we do get support. So Kabir and I, we have realized through our experiments in Bunny grasslands with A-tree, in different landscapes working with FES, is that you use models to mediate a process where you start understanding the dynamics between stakeholders. It's a little other way around. We use models as means, as tools to get people into a room and contemplate about uncertainty, contemplate about their own decision assumptions. Two people in a room can have very different ideas about how scale could be achieved. How do you mediate a process where they both can evaluate their own assumptions about scale? It can be done through a modeling process or through a simulation model that becomes a third-party entity which takes the responsibility for producing the future outcomes. And that's how you eliminate the bias between the stakeholders. And then through that workshop, get a sense of what is the dynamics between stakeholders. If I spend half a minute more here, we have done such workshops in Bunny grasslands in Kutch. We have been working with A-tree for now 4 years there with Sajivan and others. And we created a simulation app, mobile app, where you can run such models on your phone with a lot of infographics, images, and you can run future scenarios. We took that app back to the people. We have made that model with the people there at the research station, and we did a group simulation exercise, and we started learning a lot about how people talk to each other, behave, come to terms with their own assumptions, and the kind of dynamics that is happening between different stakeholders. So the model can be used in a spirit to understand the dynamics between stakeholders, rather than codifying those dynamics into a model to predict what two stakeholders would do with each other.
Thanks, Mihir. I think that was all the questions for now.
How frequently, I got a question, should I read it out?
Yeah, go ahead.
How frequently should or do the model change, adapt given the change, growth in environment? What information feeds this adaptation? Oh my God. I mean, Kabir, you want to answer that? How many versions we make of one model?
So if we believe models are living entities, it's a constant process of adapting, improving as we see things emerging in the real world, and we think that they're relevant for the model if we put them in. And as long as the model is helping us to learn about the real world, and the real world is helping the model to learn, it's an ongoing process which keeps getting us better and better understanding of the reality, I think.
Yeah, and every time the model helps us answer some of the questions that we had started out with, I can bet that more questions come to our mind.
Yeah.
And that is really the fun of doing this thing. We answer some questions and some other questions come saying, but what about this? And then you start putting that in the model and play with it. It's like a laboratory where you keep doing experiments. With each experiment you learn and then improve this. What helps or facilitates this adaptation process is basically interactions that you do with the model as a learning loop that goes between you and the comp or your model, and the learning loops that goes between you and other people who reflect on the model together, and then the conversations that you have with people to understand their worldviews and assumptions about these causal factors. That's what really expands the model. Sometimes you have to really press hard and stop, saying, well, this is the hard stop because we have a project, it is confined by time, resources, money, and the cognitive limitations. So sometimes we stop and then we start again after a pause. Can you comment on the gaps in the current COVID prediction models in India or across the world? If you had to improve the models being used for decision making, what data would you collect differently? I don't think we should comment on that in this webinar, at least for now, because well, we are not really experts in epidemiologists. What do you call them? Epidemiological model. We don't model those things so well, but yeah, COVID. I mean, the point is that if you make models for predicting complex systems, the chances are that you would go wrong more often than going right.
Yeah, the idea is to build models so we can understand the physical basis for the phenomena and build scenarios rather than trying to predict exactly what will happen. There you'll start going wrong.
All right. I think we can run some more scenarios for scaling and then come back to Q&A. Yeah?
Sure, Mihir.
All right. Okay, now let's play with this model. We have already shown you the model, so the model is sitting here. Yeah, so this is the model here. It has all the parameters into it. I mean, yeah, it looks like a Maggi soup noodle, but that's how the interconnections look. And then this is the interface where you don't necessarily have to look at the entire model to run scenarios and understand it. So you come to an interface which just shows you results and certain input parameters. Those in green are the ones that you can change. The red ones are the things that you can't change, but they definitely influence your system. So you have to be careful or be alert to what is happening there. Performance of children in a program is partially in your control, partially out of your control. If I have to say largely out of your control, hence it is given a different color there. Okay, so let's now play with this and say, if you have to scale up the outcomes of our mission, what if we increase the amount of parent workshops that we do and the parent sensitization, number of parents that attend per workshop? If I increase that, if I double up my efforts from time 0, which is basically in the planning stage, what kind of scale I can hope to achieve? And in Stella, you can also draw your results if you were doing a live workshop in person, we would have given you sheets to make these runs in your mind, and then the model would have simulated, and that's how you get into a learning process, as creating learning environments through the model. Now, if I run the model again, yes, we do definitely have some impact here. Definitely more number of parents, twice the number of parents we have reached out to as compared to earlier. Parents help us get more schools, so the schools have gone up, but you see it's a disproportional impact that we are seeing. The extent to which the parents have gone up is not the same extent to which the schools have gone up. And this is where I would reflect on what Gautam was saying, that it's a non-linear function scale. That's because the total number of children has not really increased, because the total number of teachers who have trained have not really increased. Hence, with this effort that we do put in for parents, it needs to be complemented by a step increase in the number of trainings that we would do and the number of teachers that would be trained every time. If you look at the impact variables here, the school's adoption has gone up because of word of mouth, because we are now reaching out to more parents to sensitize them about the program. However, the visibility has not really gone up because the students who are taking, children who are taking our program has not gone up. That can increase only when we train more teachers. So I increased it by one step. We are training more, and that should give us some scale. It does. It does give us a scale where we have doubled up the number of children who can get our program. Now we are at around 3 lakh children, and that has not only resulted in children going up, but has had a cumulative impact on parents going up. And with parents, in fact, we are getting even more schools coming into our program. And we have got now 4,000 teachers who have been trained, giving us an outcome of 3 lakh children. And that's fantastic. What if we now increase our schools as an outreach? What if we scaled up our direct engagement with schools promoting our program? If we did this, I should get, now it has a cumulative impact on all levels, at all levels. We have more schools adopting our program. We see change happening at an early life in the system as compared to other runs. We have more parents and we have more teachers trained, because it seems that we had some surplus capacity with respect to how many teachers we could have trained. So with increasing schools, we have increased this. But we must remember that with every one intervention that we do, it has to be complemented by a continuous increase in the capacity to also train more teachers, because they are the ultimate interface with children. Now, if I increase the trainings for teachers even more, I get more schools who are taking our program. Not only that, I get more children who are enrolled into a program, which is now 7 lakh. And I get more parents and then more teachers. What is happening to our impact variables? Let's take a look here. Yes, the word-to-word mouth adoption has gone up, and the overall visibility has also gone up. So if we complement all our interventions and if we do them together, it definitely has a positive impact on the scale that we are achieving. Now we are close to 7 lakh children. Now then, what else could we do? As a strategy, now this is where things that influence us, but we can't influence them, comes a question of choice, of strategy. What if as a strategy we decide, as an option, we decide to go to schools which have a lower density of children, which means we don't go to big schools to start our mission. We go to schools, medium-sized or small-sized schools. So now I've reduced the potential children per school to 100. This is not even a control, but we can target these schools as a strategy. What kind of impact would this have on our model? If that's a question to answer, I can run the model again, keeping other factors as they are. Now, if we go to schools which have lower children, then we are able to cover more schools, in fact, close to double of what we were covering earlier. However, it does not help us achieve scale with respect to total children that the program can reach. That's again, because with increase in schools, we also need to scale up our operations with respect to training of teachers. And now if I increase the training even more, along with a strategy of going to schools which are medium to small size, I should see a difference. I do see a difference. Now we are catering to around 66,000, 65,000 schools. We are close to 1 million children now. We started with 1,50,000. We are right now at 9,78,000. And if you look at our scale impacts, definitely yes. Going into a school, going into mid-sized or small-sized schools has given us way more visibility at the early life of the mission than what we were achieving earlier. So maybe as a strategy, it might benefit us if we start with low-density schools, which then gives us an option of improving our visibility. We keep the efforts the same as they were earlier, and we can still achieve a higher scale. Without scaling up of operations any further, we reduce the size of the schools that we target and we get more scale. Now we can do some more fuzzy things. What if more children can be accommodated by one teacher? Remember, this variable is not in our control, but hypothetically, if this was the case, would it lead to further scale? It does lead to more scale, right? Now we are at 1.87 million children. We are at 1 lakh schools. The scale impact functions are doing brilliantly well. The visibility is even higher. But I am tempted to say here as a qualitative aspect that if the teacher to student ratio increases, which means more children for one teacher, I'm tempted to say that your performance could really, really go down because you have doubled up the number of children that one teacher needs to take into account. Your performance can get compromised. Now let me reduce the performance, which I've done, and see what happens to our scale if the performance comes down. Yeah, we do see an impact there, a negative impact. Now we are at 49,000 schools, half of what we have achieved earlier. Because the performance has gone down, it will definitely impact our scale variables, yes. The adoption rate has fallen from parents' word to mouth because the performance is poor, the word of mouth falls, schools go down, total children engaged also marginally goes down because the outreach is still to do with teachers. This is where things can get really, really tricky. If you only focus on scale, the qualitative aspects with respect to performance, motivation, and things start playing with your scale. Here we have not taken into account the second and third order effects with respect to motivation of teachers to get trained because their workload is more, motivation of parents, and then the interactions between parents and teachers and schools. And all those feedback loops, additional feedback loops, can create second order, third order effects, qualitative effects, which can really come back and hurt your program in different ways, which we don't know. The unintended consequences could come and start impacting your scale. All the efforts that we have put so far shows that scale can be achieved, but certain variables are best left untouched, even if we are tempted to say that it can give you scale, because the other outcomes are not really in our control with respect to performance. So we roll it back to where we were, and perhaps if we do even more trainings, where do we reach? So the maximum scale that it gives us is around 1.87 million, around 1 to 2 million. So that's the story of how you can understand multiple future scenarios by simulating a model, a system, and also appraise yourselves with respect to what parameters are creating what kind of future runs. One more slide that we will show you, and then we'll move to discussions and question answers. In summary, we feel that multiple interventions help. Definitely yes, because there are cumulative impacts which are non-linear in nature. Hence, no single variable is most important. Although we can say that the system is most sensitive towards the number of teachers that you train, but just training teachers alone will not give you scale in this case. Also, yeah, although some display higher sensitivity, that doesn't mean that those are the only variables that you should focus upon. And scaling ultimately is a nonlinear function for which you need to develop decision support systems. You need to create learning environments which can help you test some of your assumptions, and then improve your own learning and collectively improve your learning with stakeholders by using such tools which help you ask the right questions and together reflect on future possibilities. These are some of the books on systems thinking that you can refer to. Fifth Discipline, the first book that came in, Business Dynamics, which is to do with quantitative simulations. thinking in systems which marries the quantitative and qualitative aspects in a beautiful way. Systems Thinking for Social Change by David Peter Straw. This is where he takes some examples from his work on social change. These are some of the websites which will help you read more. I'm just running through this because once we get into Q&A, I may completely miss out. Thank you. And yes, we are happy to have some discussions on this. I'll keep the model runs open so that we can refer to it.
Thanks, Mihir. We have a question from Bhavna. Bhavna, do you want to ask the question?
Yes, thank you. I was just referring to the thing that Kabir and Mihir, you both were saying that we shouldn't use these for prediction because you can't actually assess how the variables will interact. But could we use this kind of modeling to maybe improve, like in project planning and management, or reaching project goals better, improving efficiency of a certain system that we're working in, or even conflict resolution as a matter, and not just limit this to understanding the aspect or the topic that we are looking at? Could we use it in those lines as well?
Yeah. Yes, you're right. We think that it is possible to use in those lines. Essentially, you're very, very rightly said, as a planning tool, as a tool to help you improve your decision-making processes. And when you come to terms with your own assumptions, you also start becoming a little more appreciative of the fact that how often we can go wrong, right? And that is an essential step for conflict resolution, in my opinion. So in systems thinking, if people use systems thinking to verify their own assumptions, limitations, it's personally a very transforming tool. And it begins with that. And then you take it to a social interaction space where you improve collective understanding about complexities, collective understanding about individuals' preferences, biases. And you're very right that it can be used for planning, goal setting, not just conflict resolution, but improving team learning as an outcome, where people sit together and contemplate using such tools.
Yeah.
As a theory of organizational development.
Thanks, May.
I would request you all to unmute and just ask your question or share your thoughts, or if you want to put some here to just play around and put some more variables that kind of make sense to you to see how it works.
Hi, Mihir. This is Surya. Can I go ahead?
Sure, Surya.
No, I think it was a very useful and interesting session for me, and something on those lines, on these lines, we have also been thinking about of late. Reminded me of, I think it's a statement you will know very well, right? All models are wrong, but some are useful. So I think something that we should keep in mind when we are thinking on these lines. But specifically, my question was, is the math behind this modeling important? How important is the math behind these modeling? Can it make a big difference to the results?
Yes. First, I would like to tell you that I make these models using arithmetics, very basic arithmetics, addition, multiplication, division, subtraction, some kind of ratios and things. So math is important, but it is not the only thing that will determine how good your model is. Kabir, who comes from a more analytical background, can speak more on the math behind this. But Stella, the software does the job of doing the first order, second order effects of such complex interactions as differential equations, integrations, and things like that. We don't have to bother about it. What we do is we create a messy model and allow Stella to run it. The input assumptions and parameters that we give to the model have to be carefully evaluated from a plausible point of view, from a logic point of view. Saying, is it realistic to give these assumptions into the model as inputs? Because then the model will start producing very different results. So there is a math in the model. I said I use arithmetics and things. I can show you some equations, but I would really request Kabir to throw some light here because he has some serious math background.
Yeah, so the beauty here in systems thinking and system dynamics is that you try to understand the physical basis behind those mathematical formula that we have seen. So you try to build those mathematical understanding from the formula, if you want, through feedback loops. So the emphasis here is on physical understanding of the system. And when you make that explicit, each feedback loop is actually a long equation which Stella makes. But you should focus on what is the physical basis for each thing that happens in the model. And if you put that in honestly, then the equations get made by themselves, basically. So that's the beauty here in system dynamics, is you focus on the physical basis for the change, the structure, not on per se the mathematics.
I can see one more question in the chat window. Devashi's saying.
Yeah, I think it's more of a comment. Yeah, Sharma, do you want to go ahead? And Devashish, if you want to talk as well after Sharma. Okay, maybe that was not a hand raise.
Hello.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Sahana. I thought I was unmuted. I wasn't. No, thank you very much. This has been a sort of a very interesting discussion in modeling. My question was clearly Mihir and Kabir are working with organizations on the ground, and this is a modeling which has been done for our benefit in learning. But I'm also curious about if there are experiences from the ground in terms of at what stage did I guess modeling with Stella come in versus what was already being done on the ground, and if there are examples of this modeling with Stella helping sort of change the sort of what was already happening on ground and either allowing for scale or improving quality. I'd really be interested in sort of hearing from that experience.
Sure. Well, we are doing, and we have done some projects on social ecological systems, ecological economic systems with A3 FES. We're working on a national model with CSTEP. We have done 4 case studies for Gotham and others. So the change that happens through systems thinking is a very subtle change. Not easy to draw evidence or document as an indicator. However, when you go around listening to the narratives that people say after going through a systems thinking exercise, those have really struck us as narratives, which gives us hope that there is systemic change happening. For example, the work we did with FES on community-based system dynamics, where we made models with villagers, going to their village and doing the model building process as feedback loops. We did the same exercise with the staff of FES, implementing staff. And then we had 2 set of models representing the belief systems, the mental models, assumptions of 2 stakeholders who are interacting with each other to improve the common system, which is the life of people, the ecology, and the livelihoods. Now, we realize that both stakeholders are entering from different points. For villagers, it is the very immediate things that they want to put priority with respect to money, loans, bank, livelihoods, road, while we are focused on the long-term benefits with respect to ecology, resources, conservation, and things. But ultimately, we both want to improve the livelihoods. So it was a question of coming to terms with what is the entry point that the other stakeholder comes in, what is the entry point that we come in. Unless and until we don't know it, cooperation and improvement of the program remains a tricky affair because there are chances of misunderstanding. So reflecting on those mental models really helped us to reorient our program approach in terms of how we communicate with people. We in fact conducted some village discussions and meetings using these models on Stella. So like in Mathur down south in Kolar district, we took the model and put up a sari and a white sari in a school, put up a projector, ran some simulations, and asked them questions about what are they going to do about the future with respect to water scarcity, agriculture. And then real things start coming out. When we talk about assumptions, people said, yeah, water is a big problem, but what your model is showing is not what is going to happen. We have made arrangements about it. We are doing borewell sharing. We are going to fill up our tanks. It's going to recharge, and we have a plan in place. And that really reoriented our understanding, saying collective action is very much there. It may be done in a different spirit now. Perhaps we had to acknowledge that spirit, new spirit. We had to acknowledge the new commons and start from there. So these kind of experiences has told us that whether you model it on a paper, that's how we did it with FES and at Bunny Grasslands, or you model it on Stella, what is important is the conversations which help you ask the right questions and understand the belief systems of people, using which you can reorient your understanding of theory about change. We did similar workshops in Bunny Grasslands with the app. Kabir, you want to reflect on those?
Yeah, there as well. I mean, many times you, even Bunny and even in other examples we have, where when you do systems thinking in a group where everybody has an understanding of the system, but the understandings could sometimes be supplementary or complementary. But when you start building a systems model, you're essentially exposing your understanding, your mental model to each other. And we have various examples where there have been aha moments where people have realized various aspects that they don't have in their mental model, which is impacting variables that they have in their mental model. And collaborated through that process, the understanding of that system that comes up, many times people have come back to us and told us that these are linkages which we had not realized. Sometimes it's because the various field staff that is present has new experiences that they bring to the table, which become explicit through this exercise. Many times it's because you haven't thought of an interlinkage with another sector. But there are multiple examples where exposing your mental models has resulted in various kinds of insights, various kinds, as Mihir is saying, has exposed various kinds of data which we are not collecting, which could be the data at the interface of two different kinds of subsystems, which we really should be collecting. And in some of our experience, that has also led to changes in the data collection that have been happening. So there are many these kind of experiences that we have.
Does that answer your question, Sharma?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Tarun, do you want to ask your question, please?
Sure. So Mihir and Kabir, I was thinking in this simulation, like if it were to play out in kind of real world, though all the activities have kind of an equal cumulative impact, but it's likely that the teachers would probably get paid very differently from the social workers who run parent workshops, or the development team which kind of does the school outreach. But the model is actually throwing out a cumulative impact, and the sensitivity to all the three activities kind of are equally important. Can the model output like motivate then kind of conversation around economic incentives in organization, and maybe incentive parity across activities for the various actors?
True.
Yeah,
that's right. In fact, that's the question that you're asking, which the model should answer about. Can it help people reflect on those disproportionalities, which can create different kind of motivations? It can. And this is where heterogeneity in systems is very important to capture and understand. Right now, what we have shown you is a homogeneous model where all teachers are put in one bucket as one stock. But if the question is positioned differently, we can create a heterogeneous model where you have different social strata or differently paid people, and they interact with each other, and what kind of results would come. So it is possible to capture heterogeneity and help teams reflect on those heterogeneities and what are the unintended consequences that come from there. It is possible to do that.
Okay, we have another. Devashish, if you could go ahead, please. You are on unmute, so however, we can't hear you.
Maybe I can read out the question.
Yeah.
So the model can help in selection and optimization of inputs to attain quality while also scaling up. Selection, yes. Optimization of inputs is a double-edged sword, because optimization inherently means that we can discount the future and take the right decisions to maximize the benefits that are due to come in the future. but we can never really see the future in terms of perfect foresight. But still, we can optimize. The optimization is to be done with to understand uh, the best possible combinations that can give us some desired results in system dynamics. Yes, so optimization of inputs to attain quality while also scaling up is possible. In Stella, there is a separate optimization function which is built in that you can run to increase your payoffs, like getting more teachers trained. And then you run the model and it will show you what you need to do to achieve that. But he's asking, but one would need to very carefully account for risk factors, especially assumptions. All models are based on assumptions. All data is coming out of assumptions with respect to how people respond, how you measure. You can't get rid of assumptions in a model. What we need to be aware is that we need to continuously test those assumptions, make those assumptions realistic.
I think he has a follow-on question. Says,
how is quality assessed through modeling? Quality of the model, you mean to say? Or quality as a feature of the system you're trying to model? Quality, again, is a very subjective matter. Quality of output. Oh, okay, what the model is producing. Yeah, there are some confidence building exercises that we do when we create such models. One of them is you backcast the model, which means the model is supposed to recreate history of the system and compare against what you have seen actually. So if the model can recreate, say, the performance of the children as you have seen in your program, then you say that the model feedback loops are realistic and working fine because it is able to reproduce history, which is backcasting. Then you also expose your models to experts and stakeholders and get their views and opinions about the results and outcomes and say how plausible they are. Plus you do some statistical testing and things. Yeah, so that is a way of building a confidence on the model. He's requesting for unmute.
Okay. Yeah, you're on unmute now. But we can't hear you for some reason. Okay, we have a few more minutes. So Mihir, if you could just quickly tell our participants, in case they want to adopt this, they want to run a scale modeling, what could they do? What should be the first steps? One is obviously to come to an organization like DESTA, who have expertise and who have worked on similar projects. Could there be some homework they could do, or what should be the immediate step to kind of start thinking about it?
One is that you need to identify what is the question that is bothering you the most. You can also identify a problem which you would like to understand better or solve using systems thinking approach. That will help us get some clarity on what is exactly the scope or what is the nature of requirement that we have. The more time you spend on purpose development or the questions that you're seeking to answer, the better and faster the modeling process goes. That's the first thing that you need to do. Second is there's few things that one must remember on when you should come to a systems thinker or when you should go for systems thinking, is that when you have tried to solve the problem but you have failed to solve it on multiple occasions. If you are in that situation, I think the situation is right for applications of systems thinking. When you feel that there are multiple people having competing views on what could be the right thing to do to improve the performance of the system, I think you are in the right position to do applications of systems thinking. When you feel that when you are looking at real world problems as causations and not just some statistical correlations, then you should come to systems thinking and modeling, because then you're talking about real world problems having direct cause and effect relationships. So you must reflect on these aspects, and then you should figure out what needs to be done and where it needs to be done for systems thinking. Additionally, if there are any specific questions that you would like us to respond to, which will help you to think through the need for applications of systems thinking, we'll be happy to do that.
Yeah. So we'll share some details, share your contact details with the team, with the participants post this call. I think with Since we don't have any other questions, I'll kind of do the closing now. So thank you, Kabir, thank you, Mihir. It's such a joy to see that complex systems can be broken down into smaller atoms that can be dealt with, and for showing us the possibilities of what systems thinking can unfold. For those of you who are keen to explore what this means very specifically for your mission, for your domain, you can connect with DESTA for a customized model building exercise. We will share their email IDs along with the feedback form post this call, and you could connect with Mihir and Kabir, and we'll also kind of we'll share the recording of this, so you could also refer to all the resources that Mihir shared during this call.
There's one last thing that I wish to say.
Sure.
The spirit in which we work or collaborate with people like all of you is that we believe you are the people who are going to create the change. We as modelers can only enable or really build capabilities together to understand these complexities, but the change is always endogenous. You are the champions, and even systems thinking has to be championed endogenously within your missions. We are the people who can help you get to that level where you can start being independent in terms of applications.
Thanks, Mihir. Also, very special thanks to all of you who have attended this session. We know you're inundated with webinar and masterclass requests during this lockdown, so we're really grateful to you for accepting this invite and being active participants. We hope your time was well spent. Thanks again. Stay connected, write to us with your feedback and also with other topics that you would like us to kind of run in the future. And remember to have your meals with your loved ones. Thank you and take care.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Take care.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Han.
Thanks, Mathur. I'm just reading the messages.
So is I was
Same
reading.
here.
I have another call at
In
4:30.
1 minute. Yeah.
Yes. Thanks.
Yeah.
Good. Okay.
Yeah. Great. All right. Mihir and Kabir, I'll connect with you offline.
Thank you. Thank you, Sana. Thank you, Gautam. Thanks a lot for this.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.